10 plants that make your garden look expensive, but are surprisingly easy to grow. Your neighbors are going to assume you spent thousands of dollars transforming your garden this year, not because you hired a professional landscape designer, not because you imported rare exotic plants from Europe, and not because you suddenly became some master gardener overnight, but because you discovered something most people never learn. The gardens that look luxurious usually are not built with expensive plants at all. They are built with atmosphere, texture, movement, structure, repetition, and plants that create the illusion of abundance. That is the secret behind the gardens people stop to admire. The gardens that look peaceful, intentional, elegant. The kind of gardens that feel like boutique hotels, European villas, luxury resorts, or the backyards you save endlessly on Pinterest. And once you understand this, you stop gardening the way most beginners do. You stop randomly buying flowers that catch your attention for 5 seconds at the garden center. You stop creating disconnected patches of color that never quite feel right. And you start building a space that feels layered, calm, and expensive. Because beautiful gardens are not accidents. They are emotional experiences. And the truly fascinating part, many of the plants that create that high-end look are shockingly easy to grow. Some thrive in poor soil, some tolerate drought, some practically take care of themselves once established. Today, we're going through the plants that instantly elevate a garden visually without requiring expert-level gardening skills. These are the plants professional landscape designers use over and over again because they know something most homeowners don't. Certain plants create visual luxury almost automatically, and by the end of this video, you are going to start seeing gardens completely differently. Because once you understand what actually makes a garden feel expensive, you can recreate that feeling almost anywhere, even in a small backyard, even on a budget, even if you are completely new to gardening. And we're starting with one of the most powerful luxury garden plants in the world, hydrangeas. Hydrangeas are the definition of effortless luxury. Massive cloud-like blooms, soft, elegant colors, large sculptural presence. There is a reason luxury wedding venues, high-end hotels, and estate gardens use hydrangeas constantly. They create abundance. And abundance is one of the biggest secrets behind gardens that feel rich. A single mature hydrangea bush can produce dozens of enormous blooms simultaneously. Suddenly, the garden doesn't feel sparse anymore. It feels full, established, generous. That emotional effect matters more than people realize. Beautiful gardens make people feel relaxed, because abundance psychologically signals comfort and care. And unlike delicate flowers that disappear after a few weeks, hydrangeas hold visual weight for months. Limelight hydrangeas are especially powerful if you want that expensive landscape aesthetic. Huge blooms emerge, lime green, soften into creamy white, and later develop subtle pink tones as summer fades into fall. The color transition itself makes the garden feel dynamic and alive. And despite how luxurious they look, hydrangeas are surprisingly forgiving. Most varieties prefer partial sun. Many tolerate heat well once established, and they often need far less attention than people assume. One of the biggest mistakes beginners make is constantly interfering with hydrangeas. Too much fertilizer, too much pruning, too much panic. Hydrangeas usually perform best when you simply allow them to mature naturally. Professional landscape designers understand something else about hydrangeas that beginners often miss completely. One hydrangea looks pretty. 5 hydrangeas planted together look luxurious. That repetition creates sophistication. It's the same principle luxury architecture uses. Repeating shapes and textures creates visual calm. Scattered randomness creates visual noise. Plant hydrangeas along fences. Use them beside pathways. Frame seating areas with them. And suddenly, the entire space starts feeling intentional instead of improvised. Even simple homes instantly appear more elegant when framed. With large masses of hydrangeas, And when evening sunlight hits those blooms in July, the entire garden glows softly. That is the kind of atmosphere people remember. Now, let's move to a plant that changes not only how a garden looks, but how it feels emotionally. Lavender. Lavender creates escape. The moment you see lavender moving in the wind, something changes psychologically. The garden suddenly feels calmer, softer, more European. Lavender has an incredible ability to transform ordinary spaces into places that feel cinematic. That's why it appears constantly in Mediterranean gardens, boutique hotels, vineyard landscapes, and luxury resorts. And the fascinating part is how little the plant actually asks from you. Lavender thrives in conditions that kill many other plants: dry soil, heat, full sun, neglect. In fact, one of the fastest ways to destroy lavender is loving it too much. Too much water ruins it. Too much rich soil weakens it. Lavender wants simplicity, drainage, sunlight, airflow. That's it. And in return, it gives you one of the most elegant textures in gardening. That soft silver-green foliage alone already looks sophisticated. Then the flowers arrive, soft purple waves buzzing with bees and butterflies. And this introduces one of the most important luxury garden principles of all: movement. Cheap gardens feel static. Beautiful gardens feel alive. Lavender moves constantly. Wind flows through it. Pollinators hover around it. The flowers sway gently in evening light. That motion gives the garden emotional depth. And fragrance changes everything. A beautiful garden is impressive. A beautiful garden that smells incredible becomes unforgettable. People remember scent more deeply than visuals. Lavender drifting through warm evening air creates a sensory experience that instantly feels expensive. And another reason professional designers love lavender is because it works with almost everything: stone pathways, white roses, boxwoods, modern minimalist spaces, cottage gardens, Mediterranean landscapes. Lavender softens hard edges and visually connects completely different plants together. It acts almost like visual glue. And when planted in long repeating drifts instead of isolated clumps, that's when it starts looking truly luxurious. Boxwood. If flowers create beauty, boxwoods create structure. And structure is what separates amateur-looking gardens from expensive-looking landscapes. Most beginner gardens focus entirely on flowers. Professional landscapes focus on form first. That's what boxwoods provide: order, rhythm, balance, year-round structure. Even in winter, when flowers disappear, boxwoods continue anchoring the garden visually. That permanence matters. Luxury landscapes almost always contain evergreen structure because it keeps the space feeling intentional during every season. And despite their formal appearance, boxwoods are surprisingly low maintenance. 1 or 2 light trims per year is often enough. That's it. No dramatic seasonal replacement. No constant watering. No endless deadheading. And because they grow relatively slowly, they maintain elegant shapes naturally. One of the biggest mistakes beginners make is planting too many unrelated flowers without any structural foundation underneath. The result feels chaotic. Boxwoods calm the garden down visually. They create visual breathing room. They guide the eye. You can use them to frame pathways, define borders, edge patios, or create symmetry around entrances. And symmetry psychologically feels expensive. Humans instinctively associate balance and order with luxury environments. That's why estate gardens, luxury hotels, and designer landscapes use structured greenery constantly. And here's another secret: boxwoods make every plant around them look better. Soft flowers appear softer against structured greenery. Loose cottage-style planting suddenly looks intentional. Even simple flowers start looking elevated. One elegant row of boxwoods can transform the feeling of an entire property. That is the power of structure. Roses. There are very few flowers in history with the emotional power of roses. People see roses and instantly associate them with romance, beauty, care, and established gardens. They feel timeless, and timelessness always feels expensive. Now, many people avoid roses because they assume roses are difficult, and older varieties sometimes were. But modern landscape roses changed everything. Knockout roses, drift roses, and many disease-resistant varieties are dramatically easier than most people realize. Long bloom seasons, strong disease resistance, reliable growth, and most importantly, continuous color. One of the biggest secrets behind luxurious gardens is that they rarely have long dead periods where nothing visually interesting is happening. Luxury landscapes layer bloom times carefully. Roses help bridge those transitions beautifully. White roses especially create an incredibly high-end aesthetic. Soft white blooms against deep green foliage immediately make a garden feel calmer and more elegant. Even simple homes look more refined when framed with roses. And climbing roses are even more transformative. Train them over arches, pergolas, or fences, and suddenly, the space feels cinematic. Like an old European courtyard garden. One of the most important mindset shifts in gardening is understanding that expensive-looking spaces are not built instantly. They evolve slowly. Climbing roses teach patience. The first year, they establish. The second year, they begin stretching. And suddenly, one summer arrives where the entire structure explodes into flowers. That emotional payoff is enormous. Gardens become deeply satisfying when plants mature into something larger than you originally imagined, and roses create those moments constantly. Salvia. Professional landscape designers use salvia constantly, and most homeowners barely notice it. That's fascinating because salvia quietly solves multiple garden problems at once. It creates vertical movement, long bloom seasons, pollinator activity, and elegant color repetition. Tall flower spikes in deep purple, soft blue, pink, or white create visual rhythm throughout the landscape. And rhythm is one of the hidden foundations of beautiful gardens. The human brain loves repetition. Repeated forms feel calm and intentional. That's why salvia works so well in high-end landscapes. One salvia plant looks nice. Large drifts of salvia look designed. And unlike high-maintenance flowers that collapse after a few weeks, salvia blooms for incredibly long periods with minimal effort. Deadhead occasionally provides sunlight. That's usually enough. And pollinators absolutely love it. Bees move constantly through salvia. Butterflies visit repeatedly. That activity gives the entire garden energy. And gardens that feel alive always feel more luxurious than gardens that feel static. Salvia also pairs beautifully with roses and ornamental grasses. That combination appears repeatedly in expensive landscape design because it balances softness with structure, and balance creates sophistication. Another major advantage, salvia handles heat remarkably well. Many varieties continue performing beautifully during summer conditions that exhaust. More delicate flowers. That reliability matters. Luxury gardens maintain beauty consistently. They do not constantly look stressed. And salvia helps maintain that composed appearance effortlessly. Ornamental grasses. Ornamental grasses may be the biggest luxury landscaping secret on this entire list, because ornamental grasses create atmosphere more than almost any other category of plants. They soften hard spaces. They introduce motion. They catch light beautifully. And they instantly make gardens feel more modern and professionally designed. Once you start noticing ornamental grasses in luxury landscapes, you see them everywhere. Boutique hotels, modern architecture, luxury rooftop gardens, designer backyards, because grasses create texture without visual clutter, and texture is essential in expensive-looking spaces. Cheap gardens often rely entirely on bright color. Beautiful gardens rely on layers of texture, fine textures beside broad textures, soft movement beside structure. That contrast creates depth. Mexican feather grass creates softness and flow. Carl Forster grass creates elegant vertical lines. Miscanthus creates dramatic movement. Each grass creates a different emotional mood, and mood is everything in landscape design. The best gardens are not collections of plants. They are emotional experiences. Another incredible advantage of ornamental grasses is how little maintenance many of them require. Some only need one cut per year, that's all. Meanwhile, they provide movement and structure for months. An evening light passing through ornamental grasses creates one of the most cinematic effects in gardening. The entire garden begins glowing softly. That softness immediately feels luxurious. Professional designers also use ornamental grasses strategically to soften transitions. Patios feel warmer beside grasses. Stone walls feel more organic. Flower beds feel more layered. Even modern minimalist spaces feel more welcoming. And because grasses move constantly in the wind, they prevent gardens from feeling rigid. That gentle motion changes the emotional energy of the entire landscape. Dahlias. Dahlias almost don't look real. Perfect layered petals, massive blooms, incredible color depth. People see dahlias and instantly assume they must be difficult or expensive. And visually, they absolutely feel luxurious. One dinner plate dahlia bloom can become the focal point of an entire garden bed. But many dahlias are surprisingly manageable once you understand basic care, and the visual payoff is enormous. Dahlias create abundance. That's why they feel expensive. When dahlias bloom heavily, the garden suddenly feels overflowing with color and texture. And unlike flowers that bloom briefly and disappear, dahlias can continue flowering for months. That sustained performance matters. Luxury gardens maintain visual richness throughout the season, and dahlias excel at that. The key is not scattering dahlias randomly. Large masses always look more expensive than isolated flowers. Again, repetition creates elegance. Soft pink dahlias repeated through a border create harmony. Deep burgundy dahlias repeated beside ornamental grasses create drama. Cream-colored dahlias beside lavender create softness. And another reason dahlias feel luxurious is because they photograph beautifully. That may sound superficial, but visual impact matters enormously in modern gardening. Many people want gardens that feel immersive and cinematic. Dahlias provide that instantly, and when cut and brought indoors, they transform simple rooms into spaces that feel elevated and curated. That connection between indoor and outdoor beauty is another hallmark of expensive homes. Catmint. Catmint quietly solves problems other plants create. It spills beautifully over edges, softens pathways, creates movement, and blooms for incredibly long periods. It is one of the easiest ways to create that dreamy English cottage garden aesthetic people love so much. Professional landscape designers use catmint constantly because it acts almost like visual glue. It ties different sections of the landscape together, and unlike difficult plants that demand perfect conditions, catmint is forgiving, heat-tolerant, drought-tolerant, pollinator-friendly, and visually elegant almost all season. One of the most classic luxury garden combinations ever created is roses planted above soft flowing catmint. The structure of the roses contrasts beautifully with the relaxed movement of catmint underneath. That contrast creates depth and sophistication, and because catmint naturally mounds and spills outward, it softens hard edges effortlessly. Stone pathways immediately feel more welcoming. Formal borders feel less rigid. The entire garden becomes softer emotionally, and softness is incredibly important in luxury landscape design. Many beginner gardens feel harsh, because every plant stands separately. Beautiful gardens flow. Catmint creates that flow naturally. And another hidden advantage. Catmint often looks beautiful even when not blooming. That soft gray-green foliage continues contributing texture and calmness to the landscape. Luxury gardens rarely depend entirely on flowers. They rely heavily on beautiful foliage and texture. That's what gives them year-round visual appeal. Climbing jasmine. Fragrance changes everything. People remember scent more deeply than visuals. And climbing jasmine creates atmosphere unlike almost any other plant. Especially in the evening, warm summer air moving through fragrant jasmine instantly makes a garden feel intimate and cinematic, like a hidden courtyard at a luxury resort. That emotional transformation is incredibly powerful. And visually, climbing plants add vertical layers. Verticality immediately makes gardens feel more sophisticated. Flat gardens often feel unfinished. Climbing plants create dimension. Train jasmine over pergolas, fences, arches. Suddenly, the entire space feels immersive. And star jasmine is especially useful because it combines elegance with relatively manageable care. Glossy green foliage, soft white flowers, powerful fragrance. And another major luxury landscaping principle appears here. Transitions. Beautiful gardens guide people through spaces emotionally. Walking beneath flowering jasmine feels different than walking beside open lawn. That variation creates experience. And experience is what separates memorable gardens from forgettable ones. Even small backyards can feel luxurious when vertical layers are added thoughtfully. That is one of the biggest design secrets professionals understand. Luxury is not always about size. It's often about atmosphere. Japanese maple. Japanese maples act like living sculpture. Everything about them feels refined. The branching structure, the leaf shape, the movement. One Japanese maple, placed correctly, can transform an average yard into something that feels professionally designed, especially near gravel pathways, water features, stone walls, or shaded seating areas. Japanese maples create focal points naturally, and focal points are incredibly important in expensive-looking landscapes. The eye needs moments to rest, moments of emphasis. Japanese maples provide that instantly. Red varieties create stunning contrast against green gardens. Lace leaf varieties create softness and movement simultaneously. And another incredible advantage. Seasonal drama. Fresh leaves emerge in spring. Rich color deepens through summer. Then autumn arrives, and the tree explodes into fiery tones. That seasonal transformation makes gardens feel dynamic and alive. And gardens that evolve beautifully through seasons always feel more luxurious than gardens designed for only one moment of the year. Japanese maples also teach restraint. One tree is often enough. Luxury landscapes understand the power of giving beautiful plants room to breathe. Overcrowding destroys elegance. Negative space creates calm, and calmness is one of the strongest emotional signals of luxury. Now here is the truth almost nobody tells beginner gardeners. Luxury gardens are rarely built with expensive plants. They are built with discipline. Most beginners try to include everything. Too many colors, too many plant types, too many competing focal points. The result feels chaotic. Professional landscapes repeat plants strategically. Hydrangeas repeated. Lavender repeated. Ornamental grasses repeated. That repetition creates rhythm, and rhythm feels expensive. Another major secret, color palettes. Luxury gardens usually limit colors intentionally. Soft whites, purple tones, silver foliage, deep greens. Too many unrelated colors create visual noise. Professional gardens often feel calming because their color palettes are controlled carefully. Texture matters too. Pair soft plants with structural plants. Pair ornamental grasses with roses. Pair lavender with boxwoods. Contrast creates sophistication. And one of the biggest secrets of all? Empty space. Most beginners overcrowd everything immediately. Luxury landscapes understand breathing room. Negative space allows beautiful plants to stand out properly. A single elegant hydrangea surrounded by calm space often looks far more luxurious than 20 overcrowded flowers competing for attention. Lighting changes everything too. Evening gardens almost always feel more luxurious than midday gardens. Soft golden light transforms ordinary plants into something cinematic. That's why high-end resorts and professional landscapes are designed to look incredible during sunrise and sunset. Shadows soften, textures glow, movement becomes more noticeable, and suddenly the entire garden feels emotional. That's what you are really building, not simply a collection of plants. An atmosphere, a feeling, a place people want to stay longer than they plan. And once you understand that expensive-looking gardens are built through texture, movement, fragrance, repetition, and structure instead of money, gardening changes completely, because now you stop chasing random flowers and start creating experiences. That is when gardens become truly beautiful. One of the most surprising things about beautiful gardens is how often they feel effortless, not because they required no work, but because the right plants naturally create harmony together. Hydrangeas create abundance, lavender creates calmness, boxwoods create structure, roses create romance, grasses create movement, Japanese maples create focus, and suddenly, the space starts feeling layered and intentional instead of random. That transformation has very little to do with money, and almost everything to do with understanding atmosphere. You do not need a massive estate. You do not need professional landscaping crews.